Clear prop.
Tower 738 Yankee number 2 following twin traffic, 3 mile final, clear left to 1 Charlie Bravo, makes straight in runway 25, join 4 mile final.
This is Behind the Prop with United Flight Systems owner and licensed pilot Bobby Doss and his co-host, Major Airline Captain and designated pilot examiner Wally Mulhern. Now let's go Behind the Prop.
What's up, Wally?
Hey, Bobby, how are you?
I am fantastic as always. It has been probably 8 to 10 days since you were at Oshkosh, and my daughter was at Oshkosh, and everybody had a lot of fun at Oshkosh. I love feedback. I got a lot of feedback on my posts from Facebook and X and all the social channels. Their 1-minute videos seem to be a big hit, but if you didn't see those, go check out our social channels. If you did see those and you have feedback for us, let me know. I can't stress that I think people think this is easy, but that's hard work. I would actually say that a 30-minute podcast is less work than a 1-minute video. I probably have more of a radio face than I do a movie face. So to get that set up, to get it right, to post-produce it, to get captions was a ton of work. But I think those were 5 amazing tips for Oshkosh Week, and I'll start planning ahead this time. I had that idea about 26 hours before Monday, and just put a bit extra work on my plate. But we had a lot of cool stuff. You met a young fan, and I think that was a very well-liked social post. Hopefully she was excited about it and got to hear her voice. She named the 5 most important things about aviation, and I thought it was the cutest social post we've had in a long time.
Yeah, and both her parents are pilots. And they said that they drive down the road listening to the podcast, and she's in the back seat. And they told me, they said, we had no idea she was even listening. But now I want to say the father is a private pilot and the mother is real close or something like that. And they said that they'll be talking about things, and the little girl will chime in and say, "No, that's not right. It's 1.3 times VSO or whatever." But they said very
She's
technical.
like
No,
11? Was she 11?
10 or 11. Yeah. She's
that's
very
amazing.
very young. So that was
Well,
cool.
we welcome all listeners. I got a few pictures from Oshkosh. The one that I got was the ego booster was the house that I stayed in last year. The young man, he was very disappointed that a famous person didn't stay in his house this year. Just 4-flight people stayed in his house this year. So the 4-flight team sent me a picture that he was so sad that the host of the Behind the Prop podcast wasn't there this year. And so I'm sending him a simple gift this week. He'll get that in the mail soon.
That's funny. I think what's interesting about Oshkosh is if I ever forget when Oshkosh was, all I've got to do is go look in my health app or whatever measures my steps and look for the day that I had the most steps in the last year. And it's going to be like a 20,000 step day. And it's the days at Oshkosh, because I think we had this discussion last year. Everything at Oshkosh is a half mile away. No matter where you are, it's a half mile that way. And okay, all right, let's walk. So,
And the heat, was it bad this year? Last year was hot.
No, it wasn't as bad. It was not. It certainly was not as bad. Yeah.
All right, so we digress talking about Oshkosh. Is what pilots do. This week, the title of the show is The Flight Before the Flight. And we've done some similar shows, but this one's going to be a little bit different. We're going to talk and teach some this week, and we want to really help you think through what I would consider flight planning, but it's not the typical flight planning that we learn at a flight school through traditional building navigational points and things like that. Some of it's part of that, but it is how do we get ready to go fly, and then how do we continue to hold ourselves accountable to our personal minimums and all those things. Most accidents, most bad things don't happen by making a bad decision at 3,000 feet. I think where I've made my bad decisions, and I've made a few, were the day before, the lead up to a pressure from an external factor. And we're going to try and enable you to have some tools and things today that will get you ready the day before get you ready the morning of, and hopefully help you make the best go no go decision at that time, and then build some serious rigor. What I'll call is more about making it a habit to really do this every flight in the real world. Too often, where I'm at, right, we're in flight training and the instructor's making the decision, or it's simulated, it's not real. Wally, you are in a similar world, I think, as the DPE. But when you have 370 passengers behind you going on a long, long flight all the way around the world, you got to be carrying some decision criteria in your brain that's different than mine.
Yeah, well, not really. A lot of people will say to me, um, "Oh, this must be a stressful job," and I say, it, it I guess there are some stresses to it, but as far as being a pilot, and this going to sound selfish, okay? All I got to do is take care of myself, and everybody else is going to follow along with me.
Hmm.
So I know that if I mess up, I'm going to hurt me and I'm going to hurt my passengers. If a doctor messes up, he doesn't hurt himself, but he hurts
Mm.
his patient. So, um, you know, as I'm flying along, and am I thinking about those people in the back? Yeah, yeah, I guess maybe I am, but man, all I got to worry about is saving me, and everybody else comes along with me. I hope that doesn't sound selfish, but I don't add the weight of those 370 people back there, but I mean they are back there. They certainly are.
And as you're listening to the show today, wherever you're at, on a train, a plane, an automobile, be thinking about maybe some of the things that you would confess. And we're going to ask you at the end of the show today to send us some of those confessions on maybe some things that you did that you shouldn't have done. Part one, we're going to call it the night before sequence. What actually matters, right? When I go fly now, normally it's not just a lap in the pattern, or I don't just get night current or anything. I'm going somewhere. I think this is real world flying. A lot of the students and the people that are training to be professional pilots, they probably can't afford to go do the $100 hamburger, and those are real flights and big deals. But normally, if I'm going to go fly now, I'm going with my wife somewhere big, and I am taking zero chance. We talked to Brandon Cooks a couple months back, and he said, I think his phraseology was, if there's any risk, we're not flying. And you, as a professional pilot, don't have that option. But me and my wife, we can drive everywhere instead of flying if there's any risk. And so this night before type effort is what I think helps me make the best decisions for my flying. And I'm not at that last minute trying to make the decision, am I going to go fly or not? I've probably canceled or decided not to go more than night before in the last couple of years than I do in the morning, because I've got all the information. The stuff that's out there is really, really good. So what do I do? What matters the most, and how do I do it? Weather outlook briefings are important to me. We have so much information. There's so many trend pieces of data out there now. We have a lot of great tools. There's I used to always think the one thing I knew was coming would be a hurricane, but now that I'm so good with weather, because the hurricane's so far away and it's moving pretty slow, they don't always predict it hitting the right spot, but it's coming. It's not going to be a surprise. There's really not much weather that's a surprise nowadays. You might not know when the afternoon thunderstorm is going to happen in Houston, Texas, in a hot summer day, but you know it's going to happen, and it's
Right,
not going to last all day, and it's not going to
right.
last all night. So there's so many tools, and we're going to put a lot of things in the show notes this week to help you. But the timing of fronts and thunderstorms should not be a surprise to any pilot. In today's world, we got so many tools. Wally, how many weather apps do you have on your iPad?
Oh, I haven't counted, but I'm guessing probably five.
Yeah. And they're probably all getting the same data, and they probably paint it
Oh
a
yeah,
little different, but
yeah,
that clear skies are good and red and yellow and orange are bad.
Right.
And you can almost put it all into motion. Um, we've talked a lot about it. There's other shows about it, so we're not going to spend a whole bunch of time on it. But 1-800-WXBrief.com is a great place to go. And if you actually call that phone number, those people are just chomping at the bit to talk to pilots nowadays.
Absolutely.
And I get, maybe it's the group, the age, the society that we live in. Most people would rather go to a website than make a phone call nowadays. But those people want to talk to us so bad, and they're going to help. They're going to provide you a wealth of information, and you should use the phone number and you should use the website to help you make those weather decisions. I I gotta think checking an app isn't good enough anymore. Although we have 5 or 6 apps on our iPads and phones, I would much rather talk to a human being that knows more about it, is seeing and reading all the NOTAMs and helping me make a decision. So my weather outlook briefing is probably the most important thing. And sometimes it's clear, so I don't have to spend a whole lot of time on it. But then I'm an owner of a flight school and I keep track of all my records for all my planes. You are an owner of a couple of aircraft and you keep track of all your records and planes. I would assume the majority of people listening don't own their aircraft and don't keep the records of those aircraft. How important to you, Wally, is the qualification process for that aircraft during a check ride? If you're at a at a individual, if you come to my school, I know you don't even think about it. We're really really good, haha. But if you meet someone who has their own aircraft, and it's a, I'll go on a limb and say an experimental aircraft, how much more focused are you maybe in the looking at the qualifications of that aircraft and the records?
Oh, yeah, much more. And here's what we're running into now. The most of the most of the people that I give check rides to, the individuals, not the flight schools, are in older airplanes. Okay, they're in 1980 model airplanes. I mean, a 46-year-old airplane. Okay, so when that airplane came out of the factory, it had a vacuum system, it had a six pack. Today, it probably doesn't have a vacuum system anymore. It probably has some sort of a uh, G5 configuration with two G5s. That's probably the most common that I see. And it comes up all the time that I talk to someone about a total electrical failure, a total electrical system failure. And I say, okay, what what are we gonna have for attitude, airspeed, and altitude? And more times than not, the applicant will say, well, we're not going to have anything because those are electric. And I say, well, does that just make a lot of sense that we've gone backwards in safety? We had a backup vacuum system where we had those instruments, and now we don't have those systems and electrical failure. We're just going to have all that. Imagine a moonless night VMC, not a cloud in the sky with no moon. And you're going to have that happen to you, and you've got nothing. And I'll say, does it make sense? And they, well, no, it doesn't make sense. And I'll say, well, do you have the documentation for that G5? Do you have the supplement to the flight manual? You know, you should have some paperwork. And I just had one a couple days ago, and they didn't have it. I said, well, then is this airplane legal to fly? No, it wasn't
Mm,
legal to fly. So we didn't end up doing it. The airplane did not qualify.
there you go.
And the young man did not know that a G5 has an internal battery and you're supposed to get 4 hours out of it. Electrical system failure, that thing's supposed to run for 4 hours. You need to know that kind of stuff.
And you would suspect that that plane probably can't fly for 4 hours on the remaining fuel in that
Yeah,
configuration more often than not.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, I doubt they're going to send us backwards. And again, I think it's this mindset that we assume it's going to work. It's safe. I always I like to throw the few things I do know out there and say, well, are you a student pilot says, I know how to do the maintenance records. And I say, okay, just describe to me what a 337 is. And they'll be like, 337? I've never heard of 337. I'm like, well, that's a major alteration. Are you really ready to talk to Wally Mulhern about all the 337s on that aircraft that used to have a completely different panel than it does today and be
Right.
able to show the documentation? Well, no, probably not. And I'm like, well, I don't know that you should be flying that plane by yourself and
Right. Right.
renting it. And if you don't understand any of it, it's not going to
Right.
fly
Yeah.
itself necessarily. So
Yeah. It came from the factory with a 150 horsepower engine. Now it's got a 180, you know?
there's probably some paperwork on that somewhere.
Right. Right.
Um, so you go through that documentation, you really understand it. And I don't know, have you ever been involved in a check ride that skipped an annual for some crazy reason or didn't skip an annual but might not have had it documented correctly? That's got to be happening.
I don't recall ever an annual. Now, but what I will say is that's one thing I will always ask for. I'll say, let's see the latest annual on the airplane. And it's not unusual for the applicant to show me a 3-year-old annual. And I'll say, okay, this was July of 2023. Here it is, August of 2026. I go, that's the latest annual? And they'll say, yeah, yeah. I'll go, well, okay.
That's the
How
one we put
long's
a post-it note on yesterday.
right, right. How long's an annual good for? Uh, Let me know. Let me look it up. I go, well, the word annual, what does annual mean? So,
Hmm.
um, and I can't ever remember a situation where the airplane was out of annual. Now, I've seen airplanes that have been out of static check. Um, I don't recall ever seeing one that's been out of annual.
So, again, I think when the planes are managed by other people, it's easy to assume all that stuff's done. But if I'm going to take a trip, even at my own flight school with the planes I own, and I have a lot of employees that do a lot of hard work to make sure that's all up to date, I'm going to go check the systems and make sure that I'm not going to get myself in trouble. Um, yes, I can rent a plane above and beyond the 100 hour if it's just me and my wife, but I want to make sure the work's been done. I want to make sure that the annual is not going to lapse when I'm on the trip. And hopefully my team's checking that with me. But then there's other things like how many people are going? Have I done the right amount of fuel planning? Do I know where my fuel stops are going to be? It's not about just keeping the legal minimums in there. I did that video last week or so on plus 30, right? Let's always have 30 extra minutes. I'd much rather land and get fuel in a personal situation with just me and my wife going somewhere and making sure I had an hour of fuel in a VFR condition than just that 30 minutes. You never know what's going to happen. I've gone to a lot of airports that were closed for emergency reasons, and
Yeah,
that's a bummer when you get there and you listen to the ATIS and it says, "Well, sorry, we're closed right now." You probably didn't get that in a NOTAM before you left the day before, or planning
yeah,
purposes, right?
yeah,
And then I do think it's the planning of what am I feeling good about? What am I qualified? And I think that varies. I got a little bit of something going on. I told you before the show, like I've got this summer cold that's kind of kicking my butt right now. And I don't think it would be smart for me to jump in a plane with my wife and just take off. I don't know what's in my sinus cavity right now. I've taken more Mucinex today than a human being probably should have taken, but I got to break this stuff up. And I surely would not want to climb to 8,000 feet and then descend from 8,000 feet and my sinus cavity feel like I'm getting a nail through my eyeball and my wife in the plane with me, because that's going to be a
yeah,
bad situation. So, am I safe? Have I taken medication? Am I fit for flight? I think we just take that for granted sometimes when we show up to flight schools or show up to do a time building flight with our buddies, because there's so many things we've thought of and caught in the past. But this is the real world for me. I saw a squawk come in yesterday that a pilot and a student felt the feelings of hypoxia and opened a window. That's a real deal. Who's ready for that,
wow,
right? Who's ready
wow,
for that? Um,
yeah.
the
It's
plane went
okay
to
to
maintenance.
cancel. Uh, we're recording this on a Wednesday. I canceled an afternoon check ride 2 days ago. I've gotten back into doing a lot more cycling and try to ride about 100 miles a week. And so I've been reading about all this fitness stuff, and I decided I needed to start taking creatine. And so I uh, this article I read says, well, when you initially start taking it, you need to load up, and you need to take 5 grams a day. So I did it, and I started it, and my gosh, Monday afternoon, I realized I was taking way too much creatine, and I was sick. I was sick. I had to tell my applicant, I said, "Man, I am sorry. I just can't do this today." And he's understood. I got him. He's coming back next week, so it's all good. But it's okay. It's okay to say I'm sick.
So if we do all the good stuff the night before and we make the go no go decision based on the information that we have, and we're going to proceed to tomorrow morning, I think part two of this is really the current weather briefing. We've joked about this a bunch. Forecasts are forecasts, and while the data is really strong today, it probably, if it said it was going to thunderstorm, it's still probably worth going outside and looking up at the clouds, and then really reevaluating your personal minimums. Whenever I started getting this cold of whatever I've got going on, the night before I did not feel bad. I can assure you, I felt it when I woke up the next day, and I probably coughed for the first time in the nighttime. It seems to always happen that way. But now's the time to go deeper. So part two is all about going deeper and really kind of taking that fine tooth comb to your plan, what you're expecting, and is it's all mapping to what you did yesterday. And we're going from standard weather briefings, I think, and abbreviated weather briefings to really the day of and figuring out exactly what we're going to do. We joke about it, Wally. If you went outside tomorrow morning for a check ride and it wasn't 100 degrees outside, what runway do you think you'd be taking off on at Hooks Airport?
I'm thinking 3-5, three
There
five
you go.
left, three
A
five left
cooler
or right,
norther wind, right?
right,
Humidity's
right.
50%. You know you're taking off on 3.5. You
Yeah,
know performance is going to be better. And we can all learn these tips and tricks. But if the forecast was not for that to happen, something changed. The winds changed directions. A low front beat a high front, or a high front beat a low front. You need to know those things and dive deeper. And then this is where I think personal minimums for me come in the most, right? Okay, if the ceiling was 6,000 feet, the forecast was 6,000 feet, and I plan to fly at 5,500 feet in VFR conditions, and it's now 3,000 feet, and I'm not instrument current or I'm not instrument proficient, my decision should change.
yeah,
Because if it went from 6 to 3, it could easily go from 3 to 1. I'm between houses and life is good for Bobby Doss, and I can't complain, but I'm living about an hour from the flight school temporarily. And the visibility today where I'm at, unforecasted, was like 2 miles visibility, and the ceilings was like 50 feet this morning when I was coming in, right?
wow,
Um,
wow,
Very odd for the middle of the summer. Lots of moisture in the air. Um, I think my decision to go fly today out of College Station would have been an absolute zero, nothing burger. There's no way I would have taken off in a single engine piston airplane at 300-foot ceilings, right? So you gotta dive deeper. You gotta go further, and it probably helps more to look outside, because I really think my phone said it was VFR, and so there's a delay, or there was an automated weather system that was not seeing what I was seeing, and it would not
yeah.
have been safe for me to take off. Wally, your personal minimums are going to be different than mine, but what do you think about when you and your wife are going to go launch your Saratoga versus maybe your tailwheel? What is your debate there? You do the same thing, same flight, no matter what?
No, I mean the Saratoga is our cruiser, and the 120. Well, it's been in the shop getting a major avionics upgrade for a long time, and you know how that goes.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I've seen trends. I have seen trends. I've been doing check rides, I think about 12 years now. And what I think is very, very interesting is I'll say 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I would ask applicants what their personal minimum amount of fuel to land with. And I would say the general rule of thumb was nobody was ever less than 60 minutes. It was usually 60 to 90 minutes worth of fuel that I want to land with. Now it is very common for my applicants to say 30 minutes. And I I I can't argue with it. I tell them I think, well, I just say I think it's stupid.
There's
You know,
not much time in 30 minutes. That's just
yeah,
when you're
yeah,
having a bad day, 30 minutes will go by in a blink of an eye.
yeah. I can't fault them for that. It's not wrong. It's as long as it's during the day and it's VFR. Um, but in a 172N that's burning call it 8 gallons an hour, 2 gallons per tank. Man, that's just not much fuel in there. Not much fuel at
Mm-mm.
all. You know, my I'm not 90 minutes is probably my personal minimum to land with.
Yeah, I definitely believe in the plus 30. I'm not going to go anywhere with less than an hour, and I know that I'm going to make a stop if it's right at an hour.
Yeah.
And I think I've told this before, but the Vision jet that I flew, that they had a strict rule, and if you landed with 1 minute less than that rule, you were going to get a conversation, and the first conversation would probably be unpleasant. The second conversation is probably you're never flying it again, right? And if your
Right.
personal minimums aren't that hard of a deck, then they're not really personal minimums, and that's just the reality.
Exactly. Exactly. I had a young man, the cross country that I give in this scenario pretty much warrants a fuel stop. Now there might be wind situations where you could really stretch it. And we were going from the Houston area to Atlanta for this particular cross country. And I said, "Are we making a fuel stop?" He said, "No." And I said, "Well, okay." I said, "How long is it going to take us?" And it was like, I want to say, you know, 4 hours and 51 minutes. I go, "Whoa, okay." I said, how much fuel are we going to land with? And it was 32 minutes. He was going to land with 32 minutes worth of fuel. And I said, okay, well, what happens if we get to checkpoint number one and we're 2 minutes behind? And then we get to checkpoint number two and we're another minute behind. And he says, well, I'm fine. We're still landing with 29 minutes. And I'm like,
Mm.
oh boy, well, what's your personal minimum? He told me his personal minimums were 45 minutes. And I said, well, wait a minute. So you're taking off below your personal minimums. He says, well, I thought you wanted me to plan the flight. It was there was this disconnect. And I said, well, if you read the letter, I talk about going to a fuel stop.
Yeah.
So, and then of course he kind of backtracked and said, well, I'd never really do this. I said, well, we're trying to simulate realness. We're trying to do what we would really do. So, again, I would hope he would never do that. And if he did take off with that little fuel, if he started getting behind, I hope he would come up with a plan B.
Well, the AOPA, Air Safety Institute, has a lot of great videos. They're heartbreaking to listen and watch most of them. I think I've watched and listened to most of them. And there's one that's out there we'll put in the show notes. It's an accident case study called Fairweather Flyer, and it's someone who didn't take advantage of these ideas and thoughts, and non-instrument pilot who flew into some really bad weather, and it didn't turn out to be a really good day. We'll encourage you guys and girls out there to take a watch of this one. And again, they're very heartbreaking, but if it makes one person a little bit safer, it's worth the effort that they put into it, and for us to bring it up. Part three will go quick here. I think it's about making this effort a habit, and how we would like to try and interact with all you listeners. And maybe get some feedback from y'all and get some information from all the pilots that are out there. We've talked to people all over the world. Oshkosh was a good way to connect with people. I've had people ask me for the maneuvers guide link and some other things recently, Wally. Um, I think this can be simple if you make it a habit, right? And so come up with your flight before the flight plan, make a simple card out of it, do this work the night before, and on the backside of it, kind of have a morning checklist. Um, the sequence of changes are going to be real, and then qualify yourself the day of. The I'm safe checklist, PAVE is the pilot, the airplane, the environment, and the external factors. Look, if my wife was twisting my arm to get to Dallas tomorrow, I would feel pressure to make her happy. We're all human. But if it was 300 overcast, I would tell her we're going to get to Dallas. We're just going to get there a couple hours after we would in a Cessna because we're going to be taking a vehicle.
Yeah.
I don't think she's going to win that battle. I don't think she's going to twist my arm because I want us all to get to the next day. And so
Right.
the three things that I'm going to ask everybody that's listening to interact with us on, send them to Bobby at behindtheprop.com and or put them out on social media and let us know how we're doing. But if you have a confession, send me that confession. I would love to correlate some of those confessions. We talked about it a long time ago with the group from Best Tug that they were thinking about maybe starting a show one day called Confessions, like it was really church confessions, so that you wouldn't get in trouble. But what are your confessions? I won't share them. I won't give your name. But what's the thing you did that you look back on and think, oh, that was stupid? I'd like some of those. And then personal minimums. This is a challenge. Go find the AOPA VFR personal minimums sheet. It's a one pager. I'll put the link in the show notes as well. But fill yours out, post it on the internet, post it on social media, tag us in it, send it to me, ask me what I think. If your crosswinds are 26 knots, and then you're in a Warrior, I'm going to tell you you're crazy. But what are your personal minimums? Share those with us in your each aircraft that you fly. I'd love to see those. And then the question or poll for the week is, what's one thing you always check the night before, and what's one thing you probably most often skip that you shouldn't skip? Send us that feedback. Put it on our posts on social media. Let us know. Interact with us. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll put some stuff together that you guys and girls can use to be better pilots. Wally, as we wrap up, anything to close with?
Yeah, well, I just want to talk about the night before a little bit. I do a lot of international flying across time zones, across date lines. Heck, I'm calling home and talking about tomorrow, but where I am, it's Friday. But where my wife is, it's Thursday, and she thinks I'm talking about Friday. I'm talking about Saturday because on we're on different days. But yeah, one thing I've learned by doing this kind of flying is to me, and this is my body. This is I know sleep is more precious than food. I it seems like I can always get food on the airplane. There's always something to eat. So I know if I'm on a trip and I'm gone for 48 hours, I look at it this way. Okay, out of that 48 hours, I need to try to get about 16 hours of sleep because my body works best on 8 hours. I know a lot of people work with less amount of sleep, but I kind of need 8 hours. And so I try to meter it on these trips. 48, I'm gone for 48 hours and I'm keeping track. Okay, I got 2 hours here, got 5 hours here. I'm still needing 9 hours,
Mm,
and I want to get in the ballpark. So for me, the rest thing is a huge thing. I know when I'm looking at a flight, there are times where we might start a check ride at 6 a.m. in the morning because of, we're trying to get just the flight in before I start my 8 o'clock check ride. We just got to do some landing. So I'll tell the applicant, okay, I can meet you there at 6 o'clock. Well, right off the bat, I'm looking at the night before and I'm saying, okay, this going to bed at 10 o'clock isn't going to work. I gotta adjust the night before. So
Mhm.
just factor that in.
Yeah, the flight, in my opinion, is largely decided the night before. Do the work that we've shared with you. When you're calm, write your personal minimums down and get a real brief. That makes the morning become really, really simple. I'd like to challenge everybody to pick one flight that you do and do this sequence and let us know how it goes. Tell us how you felt. As always, fly safely and stay behind the prop.
Thanks for checking out the Behind the Prop podcast. Be sure to click subscribe and check us out online at behindtheprop.com. Behind the Prop is recorded in Houston, Texas. Creator and host is Bobby Doss. Co-host is Wally Mulhern. The show is for entertainment purposes only and is not meant to replace actual flight instruction. Thanks for listening, and remember, fly safe.